So today we'll be hearing from Asif Kapadia, who's an award-winning director with a career spanning over 20 years. Asif is known for his work on highly acclaimed documentaries such as BAFTA-winning feature docs, Senna and Amy, and Asif will be sharing his insight today on directing documentaries. So welcome. Thanks for coming. So if we just start with your early career beginnings, do you want to talk a bit about how you got into filmmaking and more specifically directing?
So I got into filmmaking by just being a runner, by helping out on a short film. I studied art, I studied graphic design, and I was just asked to help out on a film and carried a kit around. And for some reason, I just liked being part of a crew, being part of a unit, traveling, coming together to try and make something and then moving off to the next place. So it was a bit, I always feel like it was a bit like joining the circus.
Yeah.
And then on the side, I started to make shorts. And so I went to film school and I studied filmmaking. I made short films. The short films won some awards. That gave me the opportunity to make features. I've done fiction and documentaries. I do commercials. I've directed bits for TV. So I like to try my hand at a bit of everything. My whole theory is it's all about a process of elimination. I was a focus puller. I've laid track. I was an electrician. I was a sound recordist. I was an assistant editor, first AD. I think it does make you a better director if you understand editing, if you understand how to shoot, how to frame, about production design, about costume design. The more you understand the medium and how it works, I feel the better job you can do as a director.
Warrior, which is obviously your first fiction. What do you feel that did you learn from that experience?
I learned everything. I learned that it's another universe. I've made lots of short films. Making a feature film is a whole different beast.
Yeah.
You learn to be patient. You learn don't panic, don't shout at people, treat people the way you want to be treated. So I'm not a big fan of being rude on set. I try not to be. The main thing is to stay cool and keep thinking and keep planning and be ready for things that may go wrong. How
would you describe your role as a director working on a documentary?
It's definitely a different role. Shooting features, drama films is very physical, mental because it's all about the shoot. With the documentaries, it's all about the edit. So Senna took nearly 5 years to make.
Wow.
Amy took 3 years. And the first thing we do pretty much is I start doing interviews and research, but very early on, we start interviewing people and I have an Avid. We start editing. The writing happens in the edit, the shoot happens during the edit, and the editing happens. All the money is focused towards the back end to give us as much time as possible to find the film, to build up relationships and trust, to get people to talk to me who initially said no, and not to bully them, but to say, you know what, when you're ready, you come and talk to me. If you've written a screenplay, it's really helpful for when you're editing a doc, because you're still using all of the rules and the tools of fiction in a doc to make it feel dramatic. That's my job, is to make Senna and Amy I want them to be as dramatic and as emotionally engaging as any fiction film.
What other kind of production roles do you feel are quite key to making a documentary? What departments do you feel play?
I mean, I'd say it's a kind of, the holy trinity really is the producer, the director and the editor. They're the three main ones. But we also have, in the films that we've made, because they're very archive-based, we have a really good team of researchers whose job is to, someone mentions something, we send them off to try and find the master tapes, wherever they may be around the world. The fiction films I've made, I've had crews of 200, 300 on them. Essentially, Senna and Amy are made by a core team of about 15. Really, it's just a little family, and I find that's really great because we all know each other, they know my style, they know what I want, and everyone has freedom to kind of have input. Senna, we had a guy on the team called Manish Pandey, who was the writer and the exec producer, who was a big hardcore Senna fan. He constructed essentially what the structure could be. Before I was on board the film, right, he had an idea. My job was then to say, I think there's too many things. I don't think we need that. I don't think that's interesting. So I had someone to work it with. On Amy, there wasn't nobody that knew the story. So my job initially was to become the person who knew everything, to talk to everyone, to get information. I would say the big part of making films for the director is to build up trust. Yeah. Once people trust you, they'll tell you 10 other people you should talk to. Yes. And then the people you're interviewing suddenly start doing the work for you.
Yeah. Karis Wall from the Facebook group wanted to know, what would be your advice on technique when it comes to interviewing people?
If you've got lights up, you've got 2 cameras, and I'm asking you something, about your personal life, the chances are you're going to be a bit wary about talking about it. So I think what I would say is you need to think about how you're going to construct your film, and sometimes a camera isn't the best thing to have. I try to leave a lot of time, so sometimes people would be very reluctant to talk to me, and we'd meet at 10 o'clock and, you know, we'd say, okay, I said, give me half an hour, or, you know, if it goes to an hour. 5 hours later, we're still talking. That first interview is really key. Where you do that first interview and making sure, more than anything, that the sound is really good.
So let's go into building a narrative. Firstly, Nayan Kagosh wanted to know, how do you go about constructing an interesting narrative from a series of facts or details about someone's life?
With Senna, there was a short document. And actually, one of the things that I've done generally, and I would recommend, is to make a short film version. Right. So if you're trying to make longer films, make a 10-minute short. So there was a 10-minute version of Senna, and there was a 10-minute version of Amy, which was made before, right at the beginning of the process. It had the essence of what the movie could be in it. Fiction films, I still find the kind of process a bit rigid. And I quite like, my way my brain works is I like to be able to change and be a bit more flexible. And so with Amy, it was only once we started talking to people and looking at the footage and looking at the material that we realised, actually, it's a film about her, but it's actually about us as well, as the consumers, as people who read the tabloids, as people who click on websites, and people, the audience enjoying someone's downfall. And so that whole thing of what the film was really about only came out while we were making it.
Christian Hayward wanted to know, how important is the art of manipulation to documentary filmmaking?
I'm not particularly one of those people that feels like films should be impartial and you should always show the opposite side, which is the problem sometimes with television docs, is that, well, if you have that point of view, you have to have the opposing point of view. I'm making movies, and movies are about, this is my point of view, and generally my point of view is trying to find what's going on in the head of my central character. And I'm not there trying to show it's all equal. I'm really taking the side of Senna in Senna. So therefore, his biggest rival was Alain Prost. So the film's rival in a way is Prost. With Amy, I'm taking Amy's side. So I'm trying to make you feel for her and understand her struggles. And the people who play around with her are the people that end up maybe making the audience feel uncomfortable about them, are the people who were manipulating her. And that's your job, that's filmmaking. I don't know if I'd call it manipulation, I would just call it storytelling and filmmaking. And that is done with editing, that is done with sound, that is done with music, that is done with zooming into a shot or freezing a shot, or, you know, whatever you do, all of the techniques of filmmaking are used to tell the story. What
do you think the key is behind kind of capturing like the essence of someone who's unable to kind of speak for themselves?
You know, a lot of it is detective work, it's investigative work, it's Amy was an investigation. Someone died, no one seemed to get in trouble for it or get, you know, affected, but a lot of people made a lot of money. And then you're going, how did that happen in front of our eyes? We all saw it was going to happen. So if you imagine it as pretty much you are a detective, and your job is to put together clues and to talk to the right people, to interview those people, to understand what, like I said, what the story is. You've got to do your homework, you've got to check your facts. There's a lot of legal stuff involved in documentary filmmaking. You can't just make some statement and put it out there. So there's a lot of lawyers, and the other people have even richer lawyers, you know. So you've got to be able to stand up in court and say everything in that film is true.
And you tend to stay away from kind of formal commentary or any kind of voiceovers. Is that a conscious decision, or the story just doesn't lend to it? I
think that's my job as a filmmaker, is to find these films, tell these stories, find a way to do them in the most cinematic way, but also to make myself invisible. So you're not quite sure how this has been put together. Whereas a lot of films, or filmmakers, like to make it very clear, saying, this is me, I'm in the film, or I'm, you know, look how clever I am because I've done this long take or whatever. And they distract me. My directing style, hopefully, I don't want to distract the audience from what's going on. So I find sometimes voice of God, kind of narration, a bit distracting. Doesn't mean I won't do it one day, doesn't mean that other people don't do it really well. But I think film should be visual. And if possible, rather than saying something like that, try and show it.
Brandon Kwan wanted to know, is university vital for film?
It's really tough, you know, because I'm old and I'm from a generation when, you know, it wasn't so expensive to study. I would say university, if you can, some way or another make it happen. It's just important for you growing up and for learning about the world and to, you know, that's typically normally the moment you leave home. You grow up as a human being. So I think if you can find a way to go to college or film school, even do short courses, and if possible, learn about everything, you know, learn about working with actors. Even if you have no interest in that, just understand how actors work or study the psychology, read screenplays, read books about filmmaking. The only way to learn is by doing something. So I think the idea is whenever you start making a film, just follow it through, finish it, and then send it to a film festival. Try and get it shown, try and watch it with an audience, and your own point of view will change suddenly when you're watching it with someone else. You get up and you do it again, and you do it again, and you keep making films until you make a short film that works. So it's not always about, you know, they're not fun. You've got to really want to do it. You've got to be willing to work really hard and put your body through quite a lot. But when it works, you think, I can't do anything else. This is what I love, you know. Listen to people who've done it like myself, or don't. Do the opposite to everything that I've said. If that works, that's fine. Because it's just, you know, you've got to find your own path, your own route and your own journey.
So that's all we've got time for this evening.
Great.
But thank you so much for joining us. And thank you also to you all for tuning in from home.